Hello everyone, this video is going to be analysis of the teams before any of the matches conclude. And I'm Piff Zero along with Raceland.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about teams and their players and how we feel they're going to go against each other, maybe later when the matches actually get started, but first we're going to kind of go through the players and how they kind of stand at the moment.
And we're just gonna do it in alphabetical order, not too fancy. No dice rolls here. We'll start with Born to be Kings team, which is our Chaos team of the league. And it's a fairly standard startup for the team, except that Slam decided to start with an apothecary and 5 cheerleaders, which you don't see too often. And to do that, he had to, not purchase one of his Chaos Warriors, which leaves him with 3 Chaos Warriors. Interesting choice. Apothecary is a good choice since, people do die in this league, and you never really want an expensive player, which Chaos team has a lot of, to just die. Especially since they're very skill dependent. You see the Chaos Warriors start out with strength 4, and they don't have any negative traits. In fact, they don't have any skills at all. So they're very much dependent on leveling, getting skills to be effective. And you have your Beastmen, of course, which are very, very average. The 6 movements, 3 strength, 3 agility, and 8 armor value. The only thing different, I guess, about them is that they do all get mutations once they level for any dice rolls. And mutations can make things very interesting, and we'll definitely be coming back to this team and seeing how Slam will develop the team.
Right. The one thing that I noticed when looking at this, I've barely played this game. The only game that I played was Chaos. And as I recall, by the way, I'm new at the game. I started out with a Minotaur. Just a really big dude. Again, I don't know too much about the game, but is there a reason why that might be better to not start out with him?
Usually people don't start out with a Minotaur because even though he has more strengths than anyone else, but he has a negative trait, as all big guys have. So usually people try to be very, very solid as Chaos, because you don't start with any skills, and you definitely don't want anyone in your team with a negative skill. So you don't want just turnovers because of that, because if you roll even if you're really strong and roll a 2 dice block, but if you get attacker down or both down result, it's going to be very hard to re-roll that as Minotaur, because he has a loner trait, which means you have to do an extra roll to re-roll your failed result, and it can cause quite a lot of unwanted turnovers. So that's usually why people start with Chaos Warriors instead. Build the team up, and when you have enough money, get a Minotaur.
Okay.
But there is one of the major things that some people like to start with their big guy is they're very slow to level up. And if you want to level them up, sooner, you kind of want them as soon as possible, really. So
I can definitely see that.
Yep. So, but it's usually people start with 4 Chaos Warriors, which is very curious in this case as well, since Slam started with only 3 of them.
Ah, yes. Okay.
But extra rerolls, and well, extra apothecary rather, and 5 cheerleaders. He's definitely going to be getting some more rerolls if a kickoff event, starts rolling for cheerleaders.
Ah.
That's pretty much the only reason you need cheerleaders is when the kickoff starts. There's the event where you roll a dice and your cheerleaders are added up to the result. So if you succeed in your event, if you roll higher than your opponent, you get an extra reroll.
Alright,
Do you have any other questions for the team?
no, not really.
Alright, well, let us move on and talk about the next team, which is our ogre team of the league. Very, very curious. It's what I like to call a bipolar team, because you have ogres, which are strength 5 and agility 2, and they have a negative trait, as all big guys have, which is bonehead. And you have snotlings, who are agility 3 and strength 1, who pretty much handles a ball. And they're very, very cheap as well, which, by the way, that's probably why that Alanra here started with 13 players instead of 11. So 2 extra snotlings.
You're probably going to need that. I'm assuming they're kind of like expendable.
They are not particularly expendable, to say, but they are more like prone to injury because of the stunty trait. It's very likely that, like, if she goes up against some other team with stronger players, first of all, they'll get a lot of attacks in, or blocks, because snotlings have strength 1. So pretty much anything attacking them are going to have like 2 dice block at least. And well, second of all, when they get knocked down, the stunty trait kicks in, and they're more prone to injuries than any other players. But they do start with dodge, which means to knock them down, you'll have to either roll a both down or actual attack defender down. Sorry.
Okay.
She also decided to start with an additional ogre than, well, what is normally widely accepted. Normally people start with only 4 ogres, and she did start with 5. And the reason why people start with 4 ogres instead of 5 is that it allows them to get extra rerolls. And as you can see, she only has 1 reroll. Which means if she'll be doing anything important with her ogres, she'll probably have to save the reroll for that.
Well, at least she has at least 1 apothecary.
The apothecary is quite good, since even though snotlings are kind of cheap and you can kind of just forget about them, and like
Thinking about like the ogres.
Yeah, the ogres are kind of, they're much less prone to injury because of armor value 9, which means you have to roll 10, 11, or 12 to injure them. Whereas snotlings with armor value 5, that's quite high chances of them getting injured when you're rolling a 2d6.
I see.
So you just need to, since you need to roll higher than their armor value, so you need to roll a 5+. And the thing about ogre teams is, if all their snotlings are getting killed or injured or just knocked out, they don't really have anyone to handle the ball. So if the opposing team will focus down all the snotlings, then, well, she'll be in quite a bit of trouble there. And so
I wonder if she got ogres just to kind of be like the bodyguard to the snotlings.
That is the usual case with bipolar type of teams, which, well, the other type is lizardmen, with their big lizard dudes and small skinks. It's kind of, you want the big guys to protect your small guys and make sure your small guys handle the ball. In this case, also, they have all the same movement allowance, which means she'll probably be moving up them all at the same time.
Nice.
Instead of trying to dashing for the finish line. But she also started with 2 cheerleaders, which is nice, since additional pluses for, the roll in case, she will probably get an extra reroll against some other teams if that event happens. Personally, I like to start with cheerleaders and assistant coaches if I have any extra money left, because that covers 2 events instead of just focusing on one.
Okay.
And they both basically do the same thing. They give you extra reroll.
Okay. It's similar by just events.
Yeah, but you just have different modifiers.
Okay.
So, but it's more or less a solo team unless she gets really unlucky and starts rolling bonehead rolls for the ogres over and over again.
Yeah, bonehead.
Because bonehead is a major problem, mostly because when that happens, the ogres that has bonehead loses their tackle zones. So they cannot assist, and they will not prevent anyone moving near them. You don't need to roll any dodge rolls if you move around. So if that happens, the opposing team will have a much easier time.
I see.
So that pretty much covers the ogre team. Would you like to ask any questions?
No, I'm very strategic, so I'm just kind of like, what's some ways around these things? And that's kind of what I was thinking of.
With bonehead, you can, only re-roll that, or, you can also get the pro trait, but that kind of requires a level up.
Yeah.
Pro trait is basically...
Well, I mean the opposing side.
To counter the ogre team?
It almost seems kind of like a waiting game.
It's mostly trying to, run away from the ogres and kill all the snotlings as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So, but you really don't want to stay near the ogre since all of them start with Mighty Blow. Unless you really have some players you don't really care about.
I'm sure there are some teams like that.
But yeah, that's pretty much the ogre team for you. Shall we move on to the next one?
Absolutely.
That's going to be the Chaos Dwarf team, one of the newer teams in the latest edition of Blood Bowl, which means there's not too many tactics for them, or, not too many builds as well, but they're very, very similar to the actual dwarf team, which was from the original game. They do get access to mutations like the Chaos team, which again makes them very, very interesting to play, but the problem is they only get mutations on their Chaos Dwarf blockers as well as Minotaur. So you won't see any hobgoblins running around with extra hands. And what extra hands allows them to do is to basically have +1 agility when they're handling the ball.
That's almost a sure. Was it like pick up and catch?
You pretty much need to roll only a 2+, which is much better than a 3+, to pick up the ball. This catching is slightly different, but at least picking up the ball won't be that hard for them. Instead, though, you don't get access to that, and you usually don't see any Chaos Dwarves running around with a ball with extra hands. They're very, very slow. They only have movement allowance 4. The best part about them, though, however, is that they start with block and tackle and 6 skull.
So they want to be really kind of up and close almost all the time, because there's almost no reason to be like not in somebody's face all the time.
No, because it's very, very hard to knock them down, and even if they get knocked down, they do have the 6 skull trait, which makes injuring them much harder. And no, even KOing them rather. And they do start with tackle, which means they negate any player's dodge. So they're very, very bashy, your central force of a Chaos Dwarf team, which I guess makes sense. The main problem, of course, is that they're very slow, and they're not very good at handling the ball either.
They're very good at one thing, but I like it that way.
And they do start out with strength 3, however, which means they are not as strong as some of the bashier players from other teams. However, they do start out with skills, which means you pretty much can pick whatever you want once they level up. Because they have all the basic skills for a bashi player.
They also mutate too.
Yep. And you also have your hobgoblins, which are fodder also slash ball handlers of the team. Because they are pretty much the only agility 3 people in this team, and if they all go down, if you just use them as fodder, you won't have anyone to handle the ball anymore. And they kind of are not very good at handling the ball at all to begin with, because agility 3. They're pretty much your very, very average player, and they don't start out with any skills. The good part is that, well, they do only cost 40k gold to hire. And we can also see that Axon here started out with a Bull Centaur.
Yes.
Which is has many uses and is still argued over in the forums, what should you use a Bull Centaur for? Because this is basically the fastest player in the dwarf team. Yes, it only has movement allowance 6 like the hobgoblins, but it starts out with sprint, which allows you to move 3 extra squares instead of 2. So that's 9 squares, and also start out with sure feet, which allows you to re-roll automatically any failed rolls when you're trying to go for it for those extra squares. So it's more or less safe for this Bull Centaur to move around the field as a movement allowance 9 creature. It is much faster than, well, any other player in this team. And there's always 2 ways, of course. You can have him handle the ball, which usually not a good idea because he has agility 2. So unless you roll a plus agility to start with when your level's the first level, people usually don't go that way. But he also starts out with strength 4, which is stronger than your average player and can offer quite a lot of 2 dice blocks if you position him correctly. So it's pretty standard Chaos Dwarf starting with also 3 rerolls just to be safe. And an apothecary in case any one of those players dies, because they are pretty expensive, most of them.
I see that.
Plus, even with hobgoblins, you don't want to throw them away since they're your only ball handler. And, well, so later on, when players get more team members, they usually have some hobgoblins to just foul people and get sent off, maybe.
Well, the hobgoblins don't have too shabby a strength either.
Yeah, I think this is accepted average stats. So, like, if you see 6337, that's pretty much the average. So it's a very solid team. Also can see that Axion started with 3 cheerleaders. I'm actually surprised that nobody picked assistant coaches, because like, when you have a whole league with nobody with assistant coaches, if you can get a few assistant coaches, you're most likely gonna win the role, since you'll be the only player who has assistant coaches.
Yes, you can definitely see that.
But I guess people like the visibility of cheerleaders on the field, which cheer for you when you win stuff, and, well, if you're leading.
Get a good halftime show.
Yep.
Coaches aren't very good at cheering.
No, so some of the cheerleaders kind of look very ugly. So. I believe the Chaos Dwarf ones are just a hobgoblin riding wolves and beating up the wolves with sticks.
Sexy.
So, can get the cheerleaders. But yeah, that is the Chaos Dwarf team. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Next one is Los Alorian Rangers, which are the Wood Elf team, and as well, I think the only team that has the default names in the league. As well as the only team that is good aligned lore-wise. And as well as the only team who started less than 1,000 team value. As you can see, Sparta here, who's the team captain, decided to save 40,000 in his treasure. So he probably will save that for extra reroll. Seeing that he's pretty much the only player with 0 rerolls, which is usually not a good idea. But an elf team can be very, very solid if you know what you're doing. And not need that many rerolls, not need that many risks. Especially because he started out as a tree man, who is very, very good. He is, well, people argue that he is one of the better big guys. Because his negative trait is take root, which is not as bad as some of the other ones like Bonehead, which removes all your tackle zones and assists. The only thing Take Root does is doesn't allow the tree to move anymore. And of course, the tree man also starts with Stand Firm, very good ability, so he cannot be pushed, or even when he is knocked down, he will fall over on the square where he is standing. He cannot be knocked anywhere. And he also starts with 6 Skull again, which is good to keep him on the field, and Mighty Blow, which will help him to injure people easier, which is very important since you don't really want to give the ball to him, and that's pretty much injuring people is the only way for him to get experience, or star player points, as they call it. Well,
looking at this, his movement allowance is 2. So taking root doesn't affect that much. I guess just the small positioning of it.
Yes, taking root doesn't affect the treeman that much, because, well, most times if they're out of the reach of the treeman, they will stay out of the reach of the treeman. Because people, well, won't really attack the treeman that often. It also starts with strength 6. Something to note about the treeman, by the way, when you get knocked down, the game removes 3 movement points from your player when you stand up. So when a tree man tries to stand up, he needs to roll a go for it roll. So basically when you stand up as a tree man, every time you try to do that, there's a chance he'll fall over again.
Will that result in a turnover?
Yeah, it will also result in the turnovers. The treatment who's down is sometimes like people say, hey, you want to stand all your players up first. Sometimes not the case with the treatment, because you do have to risk it. He does start with armor value 10, though, one of the fewer big guys who has that much armor, so very hard to injure.
Yes.
However,
especially with thick skull.
However, you do have a ton of elves, well, in the wood elf team, obviously, that have armor value 7, which, well, with 2d6 is quite easy to injure. And that's usually the problem of any elf teams. If you let them build up, they become very powerful, but it's very hard to build up with them, build the team up, since they are very prone to injury, and they are very expensive. If you look at the players, they're all 70k each at least.
I can see why you would get an apothecary before a reroll.
Yeah, there are really few elf teams that would decide to start with an apothecary, because it is very, very risky to lose a player. But you have your linemen, or line elves, that don't really have any abilities, but they do start with agility 4. Which pretty much means if you let too many elves pass your line, they can throw the ball pretty much to anyone and have a pretty good chance of catching the ball.
You can see that. Just looking down the list, it's pretty much agility 4 down the line.
Yep, the only agility 1 is a tree. And they also start with strength 3, which is your average, which means they can actually attack if they do want to. Well, if you have a numerical advantage, usually. The only players that doesn't have a strength 2, however, is a catcher, which sometimes, like a lot of the starting coaches especially, do not remember. That because he's the only player with a strength 2. So he will be weaker than a lot of other enemy players. But to negate that, he does start out with dodge, which turns any defender stumbles result when he's being attacked to just a push. He do also start with catch, which, well, because he's a catcher, allows him to reroll any catch rolls. And he also starts out with a sprint, which allows him to move 3 squares instead of 2 squares when he's going for it.
Looks like he already has quite a bit of a movement allowance. Excuse me.
He does start with 8. That is one of the stronger points of a lot of Elven teams, is that they're very fast. The only faster teams are Skaven teams, which we don't have in the league. But sprint is also not very recommended to use till you get sure feet, because that's a lot of extra dice you need to roll. So unless you're risking and like you need to score a touchdown in 1 turn, then it's usually not recommended to risk it.
They usually can probably outrun anyone anyways, except if the other person places their people correctly, of course.
Yes. And with starting with dodge also really helpful to go behind the enemy line, because, well, you're agility 4 and you can dodge. That is much easier for them to dodge than most of the other teams. And personally, I do like to start with teams who have more stats than skills, because it's very easy to get skills later on in the game. It's not so easy to get stats. Say, to get an extra armor value or movement allowance, you need to roll a 10 when you level up, when you roll a 2d6.
Okay.
To get an extra agility, you need to roll an 11. And to get an extra strength, you need to roll a 12.
Ouch. So
it's much easier to get extra skills than actual stat points. So then we have his thrower, who starts out with pass, but other than that, it's pretty much the same stats as all the line elves. And what's pass allows him to do is to re-roll and throw if he is, fumbles the ball when throwing.
What is allows him to re-roll a fumble?
When you catch or when you throw.
I'm just reading the pass thing. It says if he throws an inaccurate pass or fumbles.
Those are basically because to throw the ball correctly, you need to throw. Depending on the distance, you need to throw a plus something. Something plus rather, 3 plus, 4 plus, 5 plus, any of those. And if you roll any lower, you then roll to decide if you fumble. Fumbling means the ball didn't leave your hand, which means that you drop the ball and it scatters to a random square around you.
Okay.
And inaccurate pass is very similar, except for you actually throw the ball and it lands somewhere near the place you wanted to throw it.
Okay.
So to throw the ball, you need to actually, succeed in the throwing roll and then succeed in the catching roll, which is why it is so risky a lot of times.
I see.
And usually you don't even want to do that too often with the elf team, and definitely keep to at least 3 plus throws, difficulty-wise. But then we have one of his best players in the Wood Elf team, which is the War Dancer. And it is very much displayed on how much the War Dancer costs.
Much as the trade man.
Yep. People usually have they have a lot of time thinking to, do you want 2 War Dancers or do you want a tree man and a War Dancer? It's not the same. But you usually want one, because it is the best player in the team, mostly because of the starting skills. So, again, they do start with movement 8 and agility 4, which is pretty impressive. But the War Dancers also start with block, dodge, and leap, which means to knock them down, you have to absolutely roll a defender down, which is 1 out of 6 chances.
Unless you have tackle?
Unless you have tackle, which our dwarf team does, which negates the dodge. But she also has block skill, which allows them to negate the both down results, unless, someone has wrestle. But again, that won't cause any turnovers or armor rolls, so still pretty effective. As well as the leap skill, which is excellent at breaking cages, provided you want to put your War Dancer near 3 players of the opposing team. Which is usually not the best idea, since they still have armor value 7. And to lose them is very, very expensive.
Yes.
And, not only to lose them, you don't really want any injuries on them either. Since, most likely we'll have to replace them if you get a negative to something. So, leap only itself, it succeeds 50% of the time, since you need to roll a 3 plus, unless you get extra long legs, but you cannot really get that trait as an elven team since it's a mutation. So that's pretty much concludes his team. Would you like to ask any questions?
I don't think we really touched on linemen too much, other than they're just really standard.
They're more or less standard. They're still, armor value 7, and they are rather fast since they're 7. But you pretty much can build your linemen anyway. Some people, you just use them as fodder and get them, say, wrestle, which just slows the enemy team down, and fend, which allows them to not allow the other player to follow up You know, like when you knock someone down, there's always a question if do you want to follow up? So when you have fend, you are not allowed to follow up when you knock down someone with fend, rather.
Oh, okay.
So
that'd be really good for this team.
Yep. Usually people get those on war dancers since, well, if someone hits a war dancer, you don't want them to hit the war dancer again.
Right.
But you can play more bashy with them since they do have strength 3, so it is usually not recommended since of the low armor value. But they still can stand up to quite a few teams because of the strength 3 and because of the treant.
So they're fairly flexible.
They are pretty flexible, and like the only problem with pretty much any elf team is their low armor value. Other than that, they're very, very solid, as are, well, pretty much every single team in this league. The main problem with Sparta is that he will have to win quite a few games and try to get as much money as possible, since, again, with pretty much every single elf team, everyone is and everything is very expensive.
Right. All right.
Let's move on.
Yep.
Shall cover the vampire team of the league, which is coached by Numa and only has 2 types of players, which are vampires and thralls. And you have your thralls are pretty normal. They're very average, except that they have pretty low armor value. They have the same armor value as the elves, as you can see.
Yes.
Which means they are quite easy to injure. However, unlike the elves, they are only 40,000 each, which is pretty cheap. And as you can see, as a result, Numa did start out with 12 players instead of
4 rerolls. Jeez.
Yep. And you do want extra rerolls as the vampires, because vampires have the bloodlust trait, which means if you roll a 1, and you do have to roll every time you do anything with them, if you roll a 1, you have to not only try to end up near a thrall at the end of the game, but at the end of their move rather, but also bite the thrall afterwards. It was much worse in the previous versions of the game, as in you can actually injure the thrall pretty badly, like even kill them. But right now, in this version of the game, the worst you can get when you bite a thrall is a badly injured.
So no need for the apothecary. Though I'd still probably want one, so if a vampire dies.
Usually not the case, because vampires, the apothecary is only for thralls.
Oh, it's okay.
Because vampires have regeneration, and they're kind of undead. Thralls are alive, and for undead you need necromancers usually.
Okay.
But regeneration does solve most of the problems for vampire teams. They do have armor value 8, which is not so good. It is pretty low for these expensive players, which are 110 apiece. Just 10,000 less than a treant or a war dancer. However, they do start out with 4 strength and 4 agility, which is very, very good. Again, very high starting stats. Much less problem rolling that easier. And it's just if he wins a few matches, or even if he just gets some experience to the vampires, it can become very powerful. They also start with Hypnotic Gaze, which is a pretty good ability if you know how to use it. It basically removes the tackle zones and, well, anything for like anything that the player can do of the opposing team if, well, it succeeds. It is very good at breaking cages, because technically you can have two vampires just hypnotic gaze two corners of the cage, and suddenly those two corners, those people don't do anything anymore. And you can just go for the ball carrier with third vampire quite easily.
Hypnotic gaze. Do you have to be next to the person?
Yes, you do have to stand next to the person to do the gaze. But you can move and do that in the same turn.
Okay.
It does not require a blitz action. Vampire team, it's very, very solid, but does require more abilities since they don't start with anything like block or dodge or, well, any ball carrying abilities. But they do start with agility 4, which makes ball handling quite easy. And usually what you see with vampire teams as they get more rerolls, which they do need, as they get more rerolls, you see more vampires. As well as the vampires start up, say once they gain levels and they gain, say, the pro ability, which allows them to do a reroll not using the reroll. You see more and more and more vampires in the team, and Thralls are kind of just on the sidelines trying to, well, substitute any Thralls that gets injured.
Okay.
Basically, it's a snowball effect, because you don't really usually want to go up against a team who has transformed agility 4.
I was about to say, like, I see this team as fairly just down the line average for its stats. So I was trying to figure out what kind of team they'd be used for. If it would be, I don't think it would be too bashy, but can probably stand their own in a fight. It doesn't seem like it has too many good things for throwing or catching besides just having higher agility.
They are pretty much, you can build them anyway. And you can build them very good at bashing, or you can build them very good at catching or throwing the ball. The main focus is, of course, vampires.
Okay, so it's fairly just like a blank slate that you can mold into whatever you'd like.
Yes, you can do anything with this team usually.
But more vampires.
Yep.
Okay.
So, again, started with 3 cheerleaders for some reason.
These guys gotta get some coaches.
Nobody gets any coaches. But that's pretty much it for this team. Let's look at Necromantic team, which is one of the most solid teams in Blood Bowl, which people use for competitive play quite a bit. So normally people prefer the other version of the team, as they call it, which are the Undead team.
Okay.
The Undead team is pretty much the same thing, but we'll be talking about the Necromantic team this time. As you can see, there's an array of different creatures in this team. And you have your flesh golems, which are their big guy, which have stand firm and 6 skull to begin with, which with no negative traits. They are pretty much really like.
You're not going to go down.
Yeah, it's a very arguably, I guess, a better version of Chaos Warriors, except for the lower agility.
They're really, really good.
Yep, they are very good. As well,
their movement speed.
And you get to have 2 of them, which is very nice. And, well, as many big guys, they're very slow. But that's not usually a problem, because the whole team is pretty slow.
Yeah.
You have your regular zombies, which are strength 3, agility 2, which is decent. Since, well, you kind of want them as just fodder or frontline people. and they are pretty throwaway, to be honest, because the only thing you need to do with them is just to block people and cover areas and try to defend. And they are pretty cheap, with only 40,000 per.
Yeah, they got regeneration too, so you don't really have to worry too much about. Well, I guess it's a necromancer.
Yeah, and
instead of apothecary.
They do start with a regeneration as well as armor value 8. Both of those are very good, and it adds up to very hard to damage type of zombie thing.
So rerolls would be fairly important for this, as instead of apothecaries, necromancer.
As all undead teams, actually, you do start with a necromancer.
And notice that there was no there's no value next to it.
There's no cost, which is another good thing about undead teams. But that's your basic front lines. There's the flesh golems and the zombies, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have whites, 2 of them, which most people use as an all-around type of person, because they are pretty fast, and they do start with regeneration and block, and they also start with armor value 8. Which,
again, it's just not going to go down.
As they are very they are pretty much a clean slate type again. Like you can mold them into anything, because they are pretty good to start, and they usually won't go down that often, so you don't need to worry.
As a sort of a prediction, I would assume that there are going to be more whites in there. Like
you can only have 2 whites, as I remember, in this.
Okay.
So you kind of have to make use of your zombies, but you are a lot more werewolves and ghouls. Right now, we only have 1 werewolf and 1 ghoul.
I was looking at the werewolf. That's looking pretty good.
Werewolf is the fastest player in the team. A lot of people use him as a ball handler, and a lot of, other people, the other half, we use him as a blitzer.
I can definitely see him as both, if not both at the same time.
He does start out as Claw, but Frenzy is not a good thing if you're handling the ball, because it can... unless you're very good at predicting and preparing, like, a cage around the ball handler before he attacks someone. But
would a reroll help with that, since he doesn't have a loner thing with him?
You can reroll Frenzy, but you cannot really change your position afterwards, unless you're using a blitz with him. Then you can move them again, but usually Frenzy is a tricky thing. It's good, like it's something that makes whatever you're doing, more successful, so to speak. But the thing is with Frenzy, if you're blocking against someone who you can easily fail. If you're blocking against someone who has more strength than you, or like you're blocking against someone who you're only doing a 1 dice block, you're gonna have a higher chance with Frenzy to get knocked over yourself, since you have to roll extra dice. But
it's got regeneration at least.
Yep. What's interesting about the werewolf is, with Frenzy rather, is that if you get blocked for them, say, and tackles, and suddenly, you have a lower percent chance of failing, and adding Frenzy in means you're going to be rolling more dice to try to injure people.
Ooh.
As well as he does start with Claw, which means it treats any armor value above 8 as 8.
That's pretty good.
So a werewolf can technically injure anyone with high armor value, or a big guy even with a high armor value.
Right, but he's got to build up his strength. He doesn't seem to I guess you have to have a lot of people around that one guy if he has. Because what I've seen for armor value, usually armor value and strength seem to go kind of hand in hand. So the higher armor value, the higher the strength.
Yes, usually the bashier players have lower agility and have higher armor value and are slower, but they're much stronger. It's very stereotypical, but that's how this game, I guess, works. But it is a very good starting player as a werewolf. Frenzy also allows you to worry the opposing team, because you do at least push them back twice. Well, if you're successful and don't get knocked over yourself.
So, this could be used as a way to shove somebody out of bounds.
Yes, because you can shove someone 2 squares, which is higher than normal. Which means, like, the opposing coach playing against this team will have to always pay attention where they position their players.
Let's see. And with that movement action of 8, it's not going to be easy to try to get around that.
Yes. It's a very, very fast player, which usually people use fast players as blitzers since they can reach anywhere. And then you have your ghouls, which most people use as a ball handler.
I can with dodge, I guess.
Yeah,
his armor value is.
They do start with dodge, and they're pretty much the easiest player to injure in necromantic team. So people kind of like to use them as a ball carrier just because of that, since when you're carrying the ball, there's a ton of people defending you usually.
Okay. So I was about to say, like, doesn't everyone target the ball carrier? Wouldn't that increase the chances of him getting hit?
That's the thing, though, like, because there's not much else you can do as a ghoul, since you don't really want to be very bashy with him, since he has lower armor value, and bashy means you probably will end up next to someone, and next turn they'll bash you back.
Right.
But they are reasonably fast, and they do start with Strength 3, Agility 3, which makes dodging a bit easier. Mm-hmm. Still, you shouldn't dodge with them too often. It's not Agility 4. And they are pretty good, and they usually carry the ball, but some people, like with Necromantic team especially, some people just forget about them and just go with 2 werewolves instead. And just have one werewolf carries the ball and the other one be the blitzing one.
I can see that working out.
And so that's pretty much how this team works, but the thing about the ghoul also is that he is the only player that doesn't have regeneration.
That's true too.
A lot of teams try to focus the ghoul down. But unlike the ogre case, you do have a lot of good players protecting the ghoul.
Right.
That are more dependable than ogres.
Very true.
Technically, people try to make sure... Well, it's also less people to defend, because there's way more snoblings than just one ghoul. So that's pretty much covers the necromantic team. It's very liked in most of the leagues to be a necromantic team or a dead.
Definitely see that. You're not really going to lose your players except for maybe a ghoul.
Yeah.
And even then, you have a necromancer.
They are very solid, and you can also start out with quite a few rerolls because of the cheap zombies.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the problem with elf teams. You cannot really start with that since, elves are expensive. Something else about necromantic team also. When you kill someone, like death-wise, so the opposing player had to roll it dead for the injury, get that player back as a zombie for your team. and you can hire them for your team for 0 at the end of the match.
Nice.
And they also stay like as your team member for the entire match.
Oh, it just happens like during the match?
Yeah, like suddenly the player who's dead appears on your like bench as a zombie with the same name.
Okay.
And you get to hire them for nothing at the end of it.
Great, you get the same name.
The only case when people don't want to do that usually is when because extra zombies means you have extra team value.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you don't really want to give your opposing teams that much petty cash when they're playing against you. If you have like way too many zombies.
So vampires will do that?
No.
No?
No. Because I think...
No, not the zombie thing, but like they're going to have a very large team value because of all the vampires.
Yes, because those are all the vampires and the Strauss that you cannot really replace, since, well, they're still useful. As being just, fodder and being, like, bitten upon.
I see.
But with team value, you need to manage that with any team. You don't want to be... you want to be ahead, but you want to be ahead because your players leveled up, not because you have a huge team.
Okay.
Yes. Because you can only put 11 players. And suddenly the opposing team, say, has the same team value with, like, they have more skilled players, they are definitely going to be better on the field than you as just level 1s. So,
all right.
Yep. Let's cover our next team.
Yep.
Which is the Dark Elf team of the league. Personally, I'm a Dark Elf coach, which means I quite like Dark Elves. They are the bashiest of the elf teams. As you can see, they start with armor value 8 on most of their players.
Ooh. Yeah.
And what Inferno, the coach of the Dark Elves, did is he started out with a lot of linemen. The most, personally favorite starting team roster for Dark Elf for me is 4 blitzers, and the rest being linemen.
Okay.
Because blitzers are pretty much just linemen, but better.
Would that mean you would have less rerolls?
You would still have 2 rerolls, but you won't have an apothecary, but it's less of a problem since your whole team will be armor value 8.
Okay. Which is a good kind of base defense, as I've seen.
Yes, it is pretty basic and pretty good defense. And as a thing as blitzers, they also start out with block.
Oh.
And having 4 players with block at the start is, it removes quite a lot of injuries. But Inferno here started with 1 blitzer and a lot more linemen, and got an apothecary, which does make sense because he also started with a witch elf. Witch elf is a very, very good unit, except it start with armor value 7, and it's expensive. So you kind of usually want that apothecary, which is only 50k. To save that witch elf in case the witch elf get damaged.
Alright.
Because she's 110k, which would be way more expensive to replace. A witch elf starts with frenzy, which again allows you to block 2 times. Dodge, very good, since not only it prevents the witch elf being knocked down, it also allows you to dodge out of the way most of the things, since elves do start with agility 4, and that is a really good combination with dodge. as well as so Witch Elf starts with Jump Up. And what Jump Up allows you to do is you do need to roll an agility roll, which is 2+ in this case, because agility 4. With 2+, you are allowed to do a block action if there's anyone near you. Because normally when you stand up and you want to hit someone after standing up, you need to use a blitz.
Okay.
So this time, if you're near someone and you're knocked down, you can just use Jump Up and immediately attack them without using the blitz, which leaves the blitz to be used, well, for something else.
To see why this would be a good offensive character.
It is very good, except for, well, Armor Value 7.
Then Strength 3 is average and won't get you too far. You're going to need some people helping you out with that.
It is very dependent on the positioning, which is, well, I guess not as hard to do because you are an elf team and you are pretty fast.
Right.
But Witch Elf can do a lot of things, especially since like you can pretty much get block. It's the first level up, and suddenly they're much better.
Ooh. Yeah, I can see that.
So, as I said, I do like starting out with higher stats, but Witch Elf basically starts out with abilities and the higher stats. So it's very, very good player. As a result, a lot of people focus on the Witch Elf and try to beat the Witch Elf down and try to get the Witch Elf out of the game as soon as possible. And then you have your Runner. Runner is usually the ball carrier of the team. But so technically, anyone has the same chance of picking up the ball as the Runner.
Yeah, I was looking at this ability because I was looking at his stats, and I'm kind of looking at everyone else's stats. I'm going, a blitzer seems to be a better ball carrier than a runner. What is dump off?
Dump off is abilities that few people pick, but so as a result, really few coaches know how to deal with it. And it's very interesting. What happens is when you're being attacked with a jump-off character, you must, and you don't really get a choice, but you must throw the ball away.
Oh.
If you have the ball. And
interesting.
And that's very good, since, first of all, it's during your opponent's turn, so there's no such thing as turnover. And second of all, you can throw it to anyone in your team, since they all have agility 4.
Nice.
So this is the only team that many people, well, you don't really have to cage your ball carrier with. Because if your ball carrier gets attacked, he just automatically throws the ball and just catch it with someone else.
Right.
And it's very good tactic to have your team positioned somewhere else and your ball carrier away, so you lure the opposing player to your ball carrier and then suddenly you throw the ball to someone else. But
I'm liking that tactic.
And that's because it is mostly here, because Dark Elves, it's the only elf team that is a running play team, so you don't do passes that well, since you don't start with catchers or, well, throwers.
Alright.
So they will have to just get the ball and then move it by themselves, like just running up the field. So that's why it's a dump off ability. And the good thing is that you can get 2 runners. And if you get 2 runners with abilities like catch, suddenly you like, if, well, someone blitzing one runner throws the ball to the other runner, and if on the second turn the other runner gets blitzed, you throw the the ball back to the first runner.
I see.
and keep moving up the field. The problem, of course, is that they do have armor value 7. Again,
Right.
those are squishier players in the team.
So the runner should almost always have the ball, or else you, you are misusing your runner.
It's very much like, hey, you should get the ball with a runner at least at first.
Mhm.
So that's one guarantee, pretty much, that the opponent won't pick up the ball.
Yeah, I can see the runner thing being like it's basically if the runner has a ball, there is some incentive not to hit him. You're probably going to, but there's some.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have the ball and he's available to get hit, he's going down.
Yeah, because they do get focused on, just like the witch elves. But again, right now, elf teams, again, you're pretty short on cash to start, and you don't have all your positional players because they're all expensive. And then, of course, you have, well, even your line elves. They are 70k apiece, but they do start with armor value 8, which is pretty.
Yeah, those are some nice stats.
So they do start out with very good stats, and you can build them anyway. You can have like a...
I can see them very bashy, because they can get into position wherever they want to.
Yep, they are pretty fast, and they are like pretty dodgy if you would like them to be. And they can be pretty bashy if you like them to be. And you can even get them the catch skill and sure hands and make them like handle the ball and do some like sudden passing play, especially if you like put some near the runner once the runner get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much anyone can get the ball. So it's a very solid team, and something to note actually is that Inferno did not start with Assassin.
Assassin?
Yep, Assassin Elf is one of the key units as well, one of the major positionals in the Dark Elf team. It's very expensive and it has low armor value, and I am wondering if he will get another one when he gets more money. Is an assassin allows you to stab people.
Okay.
And what stabbing does, it doesn't matter what the dice block is. You can like stab someone who has like way more strength than you and have triple red dice. And what it does, it ignores every single roll and goes automatically to an armor roll.
Okay.
Yep, so it is a good way of taking out pretty much any player on the field. Because you can stab big guys without too much, well, problem. Since, well, even if it's a red dice, it still rolls for their armor. And you can stab lower armor players and get injury quite easily as well.
So, let me get this straight. An assassin, when he attacks somebody, it doesn't matter about anything. He pretty much immediately goes for a tackle thing? Like a defender down?
Yeah, it's automatically, but like, it's automatically armor roll, but it doesn't mean that like the opposing player is down if you fail the armor roll. Because like, if the team still, well, negates the stab, they still just keep standing there. But it doesn't cause any turnovers or anything, so you can just keep stabbing people.
So when you actually go and attack somebody, it's actually no rolls at all, and you immediately try to injure them.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And like, even if they fail, those rolls will never really happen.
Yep. And it doesn't count as anything like a secret weapon or anything, so it's just them.
Wow. That seems a little broken, but alright.
The only bad thing about stabbing people is that, well, first of all, you need to be near them. And, well, they'll bash in return and you have low armor value. And the second thing, you don't get any experience for that.
Oh. Wow, it's going to be hard to level him up.
It's okay, I guess, because they do still... Well, there's still elves in the starter's agility 4.
Okay. So you can still kind of just pass back and forth and have a good old time.
Yeah. As a team, as a Dark Elf team, you kind of want to feed your players touchdowns.
I can see why you wouldn't want to get one of those. Especially since there's not really going to be any rematches. I guess maybe in the... Is there going to be like a... Is this going to be just purely round robin, or is there going to be like round robin and then like whoever's in the top whatevers?
Yeah, round robins and the top 4 will go for an elimination match.
Okay, so there are going to be some rematches.
Yeah. There's going to be some rematches, and Assassin, it's kind of good during the match too, since if you like especially take down someone's big guy with the armor roll, you're suddenly at an advantage. It's basically, well, does what the name says. Try to assassinate key targets.
Yeah, but I can see him being good like with abilities, but you're gonna have to get him abilities, which is gonna be hard.
Assassin is pretty... you don't really need too many abilities for an assassin elf, but
Claw.
well, no, you can't really get claw for elves, but the only thing that affects them, like, well, how effective they are, is jump up. So, because, well, you're gonna be get knocked down, you're gonna get focused on by enemy. So jump up works because you can jump up and attack someone again. And something else is that if you roll a double and get a strength ability, you can get a multiple block. Because if you remember, it doesn't matter if you're rolling red dice. You're still just trying to injure people, right?
Right.
And what multiple block does is that you can attack 2 people, but your strength is halved for the attacks.
And that doesn't matter. Yay!
Yes, and you can stab 2 people.
Double stab.
Alright, so any questions for the elf team?
No. None at all.
They're pretty solid, but then we go and then we see our Underworld team, which is again one of the new teams in this version, which means, well, there's not much known about them.
Oh my god, do you see what I see?
Yeah. They have a lot of goblins.
They have an assistant coach.
And they have the only team is an assistant coach, so there'll be some good rolls for extra re-rolls there. So it's kind of not too needed, I guess, because Kikoni is a team coach of the Underworld team, did start with 4 re-rolls.
It's pretty intense.
Very, very good. It's a very cheap team, as you can probably see. Most of the players are pretty cheap. So you do have a lot of extra money, and you pretty much can get everything you want. So he is missing that apothecary.
Yeah.
Which is...
I was looking at that, I'm going like, are you sure? Because you got a few people that you probably should have.
The Underworld team is very similar to an elf team, that most of the players are armor value 7.
Ooh.
And that means a lot of injury. But unlike the elf team, they are also strength 2. Which is not that great, as well as agility 3.
Ow, what is the good things?
The good things is they're cheap, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much, that's your Underworld goblins. And I guess the good thing as well is that they do start with Stunty and Dodge. Stunty allows them to negate any tackle zones when dodging, and Dodge allows you to re-roll any dodge roll if you fail. Which means, well, when you're dodging, you're always rolling a 3+. If you fail, you can re-roll at any time. it doesn't matter if there's 4 people surrounding you or like the entire team.
You can still just kind of walk out.
It is still the same roll. It is always the same roll.
Do you have to roll for everyone, or just like one like square?
You need to roll for each square you're dodging, but you're not getting any extra modifiers because there's extra people.
Okay.
So no matter if there's one person like blocking a pass or 4, you're still rolling a 3+.
I see.
The bad thing about stunty is that, well, you are more prone to injury because it treats 7 and 9 on any injury. Like it basically gives you a -1 on any injury rolls, which is not too great. So, but they are rather cheap, and you can get them around quite easily. They're not really slow. They're still movement 6.
What's this right stuff?
Right stuff is something that only pretty much goblins and halflings have. And what it allows to do is for people who have the throw teammate trait to throw the person with right stuff. And what that allows to do is for the right stuff player to cover way more ground.
Okay.
You can either say you can move them near the player who can throw them and then throw them, or you can like just have them near the player who can throw them and then throw them first and then move them after.
Oh wow.
And what it does it allows for very, very risky, but still it allows for 1-turn touchdowns. You get the ball, you pass it near a goblin to a goblin who has who's near the troll, and the troll throws the goblin lands, the goblin goes and scores. It is very risky.
It's like last ditch kind of thing.
It kind of is, since you need to pretty much keep rolling 6s for that to succeed.
Ouch.
But it does allow for a 1-turn touchdown. Because if you fail the throw, your player lands on the ground and gets injured.
And he has that negative injury roll? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, the problem is also that, if you're carrying the ball, if the player who's being thrown, right, carries the ball, that player it also causes a turnover.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't carry the ball, however, it's okay.
Alright.
You can throw them around. Something also interesting about throw, if your player lands on the other team's player or your own players, they both get knocked down. So, like, technically you can just have goblins near the warp zone troll, which will...
Oh, man.
And just keep throwing them at the enemy.
If you could throw some zombies, that'd be great.
So
Throw some assassins.
That brings us to the warp zone troll. It's a big guy of the team, and starts with strength 5, which is not as strong as a trident. But it does start with armor value 9 and a movement 4. The trait for it's a negative traits, because there's quite a lot of them for the troll, is that
my god,
they're really stupid. And you have to succeed the really stupid to do anything. So if you're trying to throw someone, for example. And not only is that, really stupid can be negated. So if you position someone's clever near the really stupid person, because normally you need to roll a 3+, so that's half chance of failing.
For really stupid?
Yeah, but
okay.
But then if you position someone near them who's not stupid, you only need to roll a 1+.
Okay.
So basically someone going like, hey, you do that to them. Then you have the loner trait, that's like all big guys, and then you have the problem of the always hungry trait.
Uh-huh.
And when that happens, if you roll a 1, instead of throwing his teammate, he eats his teammate.
I'm assuming they'll get like get an injury roll?
Yeah, they pretty much just injury roll. Goes straight for injury roll. And
This is not sounding like a very savory team.
it's a very risky thing to do, throwing people, because like how rewarding it can be. Because you can like do a 1-turn touchdown. It is very, very risky. Because you need to roll for the really stupid, you need to roll for the throw, you need to roll for the always hungry, and you need to roll for the landing.
And I'm assuming you also have to roll for the go for it's.
No, unless usually you're more or less fast enough. But sometimes yes, you do actually have to roll for the go for it, because like when you're landing, you do a scatter roll.
Okay.
Where you're depending on your so you can throw someone out of the pitch.
Oh, good.
So that's their fodder, and they're basically the big guy. Then you have the Skaven in the team, which are the better players, usually.
Whew, jeez.
You start out with Skaven linemen, which are 50k each. They're pretty average, to be honest, except for that they are faster than your average players. They do start with 7 movement allowance. Unfortunately for the underworld teams, they start with animosity. And
What is that?
animosity means when you pass a ball from a Skaven to a goblin, you need to do an extra roll.
What?
So
Why?
Because the Skaven don't like the goblins, and they don't want to give the ball to the goblin.
Why? Who made this team? Why was the developer just like, it'd be great if we made a team that didn't work with each other? That whole meshing thing? Nah, we're not gonna have it. We're gonna have our runners freaking not be able to catch the ball because the people throwing it hate them. Why would you do that? Can't understand.
The thing is animosity is that it doesn't cause a turnover, but it is still pretty bad.
Okay, what exactly, other than just kind of going, I hate goblins when I throw it to them?
Well, when you try to pass a ball, you need to roll 2+. Only to a goblin, though. You need to roll 2+, and if you fail the rolls, they just hang on to the ball and nothing else happens.
Okay. It's like, I'm over here, throw it over here. I don't like that guy, so I'm not gonna throw this.
Nope. I'm gonna keep the ball. I don't trust the goblin with the ball.
I don't trust you. I'm on your team.
So that's your lineman, but normally you don't really use the lineman for ball handling that much. They are more or less still the better fodder type. So they're still 50k, they're rather cheap, and they don't have any stunty traits, but they don't have dodge either.
Are you kidding me? Even the freaking throwers, the people who are meant to throw,
Yep.
still don't.
No, like, the thing about this team is you always have this goblin and Skaven hate going on. All the Skaven don't like the goblins. That's the thing. So the throwers are pretty good to start with, to be honest, because they do have pass and sure hands. So even though they are agility 3, you do have an automatic reroll when you when you try to pick up the ball, which usually what throwers do. Elves don't have that. Elves don't start with that. So you can do an automatic reroll if you fail, and you do an automatic reroll if you fail to pass. So usually you kind of just want throwers throwing to other Skaven.
Then what the hell are the goblins there for?
They're mostly fodder, but and mostly to tie other players up and give assists. But the goblins, the thing is about this team, the stupid thing I guess, is that the goblins are much better at getting to the opposing half and catching the balls and Skaven, because they have dodge and stunty. So they have much easier time to getting past everyone and like getting to where they want to catch the ball.
So would you say that the rerolls would be for the whatever roll that is, animosity?
Yep, they do have very cheap rerolls to start with. Right now, what you're seeing, it's a price range thing, Roger. It is what happens is when you start the season, it's double the money for the rerolls. You need to spend double. So before you start the season, when you're building your team, you only need half of the cash for the reroll to buy. Yeah. So it is rather cheap rerolls for their team, and it is. It's mostly passing team or ball handling team, but they have some, like they do have their blitzers, which are armor value 8, 3, 3, 7, which are fast and they can blitz.
And they have block. Those are pretty good players.
Yeah, they do start with block. It's just a team that's pretty cheap, but you can have a lot of them, I guess.
I can see some problems with that, like the blitzers getting focused.
Yeah, because they are the expensive people in the team, as well as the throwers. Like those 4 get focused quite a bit. And the problem with this team is like you kind of want a lot of players with them. The thing is, normally, like, say the throwers, right? You don't really want them during any turns when you're not getting the ball.
Oh, okay.
Because you don't
kind of put away your
your
throws until you
Yeah, so like this team is more focused on switching out players. It is actually very similar to how Dark Elf team also works. You don't really want your runner during the time when like you're actually like defending.
Okay.
Because you have higher armor value people with actual block or with skills that prevents them to be killed. So that's usually how this works. And unlike the elf team, with this team it's much easier to get that done. Because, you have very, very cheap players. Not as cheap as Snotlings, but they're still pretty cheap.
Alright.
Well, this is one of the more challenging teams to play zone in the league.
I can definitely see why.
The only major plus to them, I say, is that they do get access. The Skaven rather get access to mutation rolls. So you can get mutation skills for the Skaven quite easily. But again, if you really wanted that, you'd probably just went for a Skaven team instead.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this is random, so rolling random. And this is a team that Kikoni got. Well, do wish him the best of luck.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
That pretty much covers all the teams for the Random Cup, and that did take quite a while, I have to say.
It did. Alright. Well, Again, this is Piff Zero and Raceland.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And hope you will enjoy the cup.
Ditto.